So, welcome back. Sorry, we lost the stream there for a second. So we were talking about shape building real quick, and then we'll move right into image tracing here. So, what we do for shape building is that we're going to go ahead and select the area that we want to work with the selection tool here. And I can click and drag to kind of select these two objects here. And again, with shape building, you have to have both objects selected that you want to shape build with, and they have to intersect at some point here. So with this is a circle. If we click and drag this out, this is just a circle that sits on top of a square that's kind of equal in width. You can create some pretty kind of nice and complex shapes just by combining simple shapes together. So what we'll do is we'll highlight these two, and then we'll go to the shape builder. Then we will click and drag to connect them all together. You'll see this little crosshatch shows up and they turn red. Once I let go, they're connected and we're good to go. So one other thing we can do here, and I'll move kind of quick, is we can select multiple shapes and also subtract content from them. So we can build shapes by combining shapes together and then removing content. So this is a little half moon I want to create. I'll create that by taking two circles of equal size, putting them on the same horizontal plane, and then moving it in a little bit to create that crescent moon here. What I'm looking at is this shape that's kind of created with the overlap. Now, once I have those together, I will select both of them and then go to the shape builder tool. Keyboard shortcut for that is Shift and M. But I'll just click the shape builder tool most of the time, honestly. And then you'll see I have a plus button right here. If I hold down the Option key and I click and drag, that will bring up the minus, which will allow me to remove content here. So I'll just move the mouse in between the two intersections. I'll let go. Then there's my half moon shape. Lastly, we'll go ahead and do that with these two guys right here. So these, as you can kind of see when I click on them, are basically a Venn diagram here. And I'm trying to kind of create an eyeball shape. So this kind of arc on both sides of the Venn diagram creates that eyeball shape for me. So I'm going to go ahead and try that out. I'm going to select both of these guys. Grab the shape builder tool and just kind of trim the top part and the bottom part together to leave this eyeball in the center. So if I click and drag here, you'll see that it removes that content. I'll do the same move across the top, removes the content, good to go. So finally, we will bring this design together. So with Illustrator, all these are different elements that we can select and move into place. So click and drag. Move that over there, click and drag this, move it over there. And all these are set up on different layers and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and move this eyeball over here. You'll see that this eyeball layer is on top of this blue layer. So if I wanted to bring this blue layer forward, I could select it, and then I could keyboard shortcut to bring something forward is holding down the Command key on a Mac, Control on Windows, then pressing the right bracket. That will bring that forward, but I can also send it back by pressing holding on the Command or Control key and then pressing the left bracket multiple times. It will cycle between all the different layers. Move this into place, and there is our eyeball. Cool. So now what we're all here for, let's go ahead and we'll jump right into image tracing, and we'll go through a few different examples of it and talk a little bit about it, and we'll take it from there. Cool. So let's go ahead and talk about image tracing. So what image tracing allows us to do is it allows us to take a photo, which is not a file type that's intended for Illustrator, although I can bring it in just fine, and then convert it into one that is. So image tracing is pretty easy to do. You can use the context sensitive menu to select the photo that we want here. So this happens to be a photo that's already made for us. Cool. So then when I select this photo, under quick actions on the right hand side, and I'll zoom in over here. Actually, I'll just go ahead and make this a little bigger so we can kind of see that those are individual pixels right there if we kind of get down into it. Whereas like with vector artwork, if I zoom in over here, I can zoom in really tight. You'll see that this maintains fidelity throughout, right? So that's because this is a vector object created with lines and shapes, and this is a raster object it's made of pixels. And if we go down tight enough, you can actually kind of see the individual pixels here. Be a little bit hard to look at with the eyes sometimes. But our goal with image tracing is to turn those pixels into vector artwork that we can use in kind of however we want. So now we select the image that we want, and then under the quick menu here, quick actions, we will select image trace. And we'll kind of go with a really simple image trace, then we'll break it down a little bit further later. So now what we'll do is click on image trace here. And then it gives me some options here. So we can kind of go through them. I'll click on high fidelity just to kind of show you what it looks like. And this is going to be the closest preset to photoreal that you have. So if you click on that, it will process this. And then if you take a look at it, it looks pretty good. But if we zoom in, those like little, you can kind of see what was being created here with those pixels. It kind of groups those pixels together and then creates lines and shapes to create those images here. And while that doesn't look great up close, if we kind of zoomed in really tight on it, at normal viewing distance, it looks pretty good. Like there's not a gigantic difference in between here. So if we go to low fidelity color, you'll definitely see the changes over here. You kind of get this neat gradient that's happening over here, which can look really good with sunsets and things like that. And then we can go with different things like 3 colors, 16 colors, and then all of these other different presets that we have here. I'm going to go ahead and go down to, I'll go to 3 colors just so you can kind of see. It literally picks 3 colors and the entire image is composed of those 3 colors in white. It's really cool. And 6 colors will bring back a little bit more fidelity. Then 16 colors will bring back even more. It's really amazing kind of how much depth of color you can get just with the simple amount of colors. But what we're looking for here is sketched art. I think might work the best. So if we click on that, we'll see that it creates very, very simple shapes here, and things are black or white. They are there or they're not. So any of these black sections right here are converted shapes. Anything that's not in these black sections here isn't. So this works for this particular thing. Now, once we hit image trace, in order to commit that change, we have to hit expand. So expand basically takes those shapes and then converts them into paths that you can use, or takes those pixels and converts them into shapes that you can use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit expand here, and then now all of these are pieces of vector art that we can use here. So when I click on them, they will select for us. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and select this little robot guy here. So what I'll tend to do, especially if I know I want a piece of one particular thing, I will move things out of the way, just to make it easier for me to select, especially if I know that I'm going to come back. And honestly, I could use these elements over here later. So what I can do is I can click and drag to select the areas that I want to use. Cool. Now, from there, I will literally just click and drag this guy into place. And there it is on our birthday card right here. Cool. And then we can select these guys right here. And actually, one thing that we can do, I'll do this over here first. If I select a bunch of different elements, so you see that these are all kind of different pieces that I can move around, but if I want them to move together easily, I can select all the ones I want, and I'm just clicking and dragging to select them. But if you had a lot of complex shapes, then you can hold down the shift key and click on the individual elements to select them all. But because this is kind of simple, it's going to be easier for me just kind of click and drag to select like this. Then I can right click and then group these together. If I group them together, then whenever I click on this section, they'll all kind of move as a unit, which is super nice. Make sure I have the right unit selected. There we go. Cool. And then I can grab a corner and scale it down. I've scaled it all kind of together by holding down the shift key. As I click and drag, that will maintain proportion so I can make it smaller without it kind of stretching out on me. If I didn't mind it stretching out, I could just click and drag from a corner here, and you'll see it'll kind of free transform and things like that. And you may notice that everything behind here is blacked out. The reason why it's blacked out is because we're in isolation mode here. So if I double click away from this, you will see that now everything is kind of vibrant and colorful. But if I wanted to select just an individual element, if I double click on it, everything else on that artboard kind of grays out, and then I know that I'm just working with the stuff that's not grayed out. So that's called isolation mode, and that can be a great way to select just the elements that you know you want to use. Cool. So, and that's one way to use image trace. We can bring all these other guys here. And the other cool thing about image tracing is that if I wanted to change this color, I could. So if I click on this guy, and then I go to fill here, and fill is going to be the inside of our shapes. I'm going to hit fill, and then I'll pick a color here. So if I wanted this to be this cool gradient, I could do that. And then you'll see that I have kind of a super different look with this same shape. So I'll pick a different one. Maybe this gray blue. We'll just go with like a white. So it looks like it's kind of punched out there. Then I have this very, very different looking shape here. So other cool thing about vector objects and things like that, if you're creating that, is that you have a lot of space to manipulate the shapes that you use. So highly recommend that you take a look at these types of things to make them make sense for you. All right, so now let's talk about image tracing, some other stuff. And for that, I will bring in some other images here. I'll use the same artboard though, and I'll just kind of pick whip all of this stuff, and we'll just delete it. So we have kind of a fresh artboard over here on the left. I'll bring a couple different images and show you how we can, other ways that we can use image tracing. So let me go ahead and find my images here. Go to File, and then Place. So Place is kind of like a set in a spot option here in Illustrator, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So if I go to Downloads, I have some images that I'm okay using here. We'll just go with JPEGs. We'll start with this one. So I'll go ahead and grab this guy, but I'll move it into place here. Cool. So I like it a lot. I have this kind of, okay there. I'm just gonna move it. I have this super wild looking image over here, and I haven't image traced this before, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But basically, we'll kind of walk through some more options that we have here in image trace. So I have this image selected here. So I'm going to go to image trace. I'll just choose default here. And it's going to give you a warning and say, hey, this process may move slow if you because this is a pretty large image, and this is a nice like big chunky image. So you have the option to reduce the image size to raster. If you go to object and rasterize, I'll hit OK here because I'm okay with waiting because this computer moves pretty fast. But there we go. So now that image traced this thing black and white. It moved really, really quickly. But you can see we can still see the outlines of these folks. So, well, these llamas, I guess. But if we chose high fidelity photo here, it'll take a minute to work through it. And then once we're done, you'll see that this looks pretty good. And the nice thing about, so if you were taking an image and you just wanted to kind of keep it as close to the original, but make it a vector shape, you could do that, and then you could scale this up to be bigger than it was, and it'll probably still print out pretty good. And also, like, you could put it on the side of a building or something like that. There's some more processing to do if you wanted to do that a little bit more accurately, but the idea is you could take this, and I would argue that from iShot here, it's pretty photorealistic. We really kind of have to get close to kind of see where this starts to break. We can even see the reflections of the people who took the picture with the sunglasses in here still. So it still looks really, really nice. We have to get really close to kind of see that they don't look like the pixels that represented them anymore. So it's a pretty solid, really easy to do technique to get way more out of your images. So, but let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper. If we go to Open Image Trace Panel, we'll bring up this little panel right here that gives us a bunch of different options. And really, this is where we'll be spending a little bit of time. So you have presets here. You want to kind of start, typically if you're going to be using this image trace panel, with what colors do you want represented here. So if I go to auto color, it's going to take a look and basically create what Illustrator feels is the best preset for this guy. So it's going to look at optimizing colors and things like that, and then it's doing what's called pixel clustering. So it's finding neighboring pixels that are similar in color value that it thinks won't kind of break the entire image, and then putting them together. And you'll see that this gets a little bit of a lower fidelity feel than what we had previously. And every time that you do this process, you have to wait for it to convert the image. So we'll give that a minute here. It's kind of quick. And once it's done, we'll have these guys, and we'll keep looking at a few of the different presets that are available to us. And then I'll show you how to speed it up next time that we bring in another image. Cool. So there is our vector image there. And then I can go, and then we have low color. And basically kind of the further you go down to the left here, the faster this will typically trace. So this is looking for kind of like that 16 color thing we had before. It's picking less colors to create this image, which can be kind of a neat stylized effect if that's what you're going for. I think that you see like good examples of things like this. A whole lot of nature photography will be kind of converted to these kind of like basic tones here, so everything looks a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more like kind of like I said, single color sourced and things like that. It's pretty cool. You can absolutely take a look at that, and then we can bring this grayscale, which will take a look at the image and then just make it all shades of gray, because you get like a black and white image. It essentially desaturates the image, getting rid of all of the color that's in it. That's what desaturating is. Once that's done, we'll take a look at what outline looks like, and then we will continue to work on a few other things here. So still looks pretty good, but it just kind of converts this all to black and white. And then this is probably one of the fastest ones, just black and white here. It's either the pixel's white or it's black. And this is great, like if you want to kind of convert everything to one color here, if you were using this for maybe trying to create a monochrome or single color image, or you wanted to see what does this look like if it's all red for like a vinyl sticker or something like that. This would be a great preset to use to kind of envision what that would look like and set it up so that it can be done. I'm going to go ahead and go back to this high color setting. I'll take a look at a few of the other options once we're done here. Give it a second to cook. Cool. All right. While that wraps up, cool. So there is our image there, and like I said, it looks pretty good. And then we have a bunch more controls over here, and really this control is where we kind of get into the nitty gritty of what this offers us. So we have our preset, and we can manage and create new presets if we really like a preset we made. We can change the mode from black and white to grayscale to color, but this view tracing result's really nice. So if we go under view, we can change this to our result with outlines. So this is going to show us what all the shapes look like. So you can see there's a lot of shapes that will be generated when we create this. We can see just the outlines for the result. So kind of wild. And then we have outlines with the source image. So you can kind of see the original image underneath it if you can get kind of that far and kind of see what's underneath it. And the simpler the source, the less geometry that will be built as a result. So another thing that image tracing can be really useful for is reconstructing a logo. So if you have only a JPEG image of a logo that was used by an organization, and they need, you're working with them and they need like a full size version of that. You could use image trace to basically help you recreate that logo. I've done that for a few projects that I've worked on before, and it's turned out really nicely. And there are some other things you may have to manipulate and change around things for, but generally, if you have a clean logo and it's decent in size, it doesn't have to be like huge, just relatively decent, like a medium-sized image. You can do a pretty good job with this image trace to kind of get really close. And this is a great way to kind of see what that geometry looks like. For this photo, maybe not such a great example here, so we'll just go with the tracing results. Cool. And then we can adjust the colors here. So if we wanted to lower this to like say 50 colors, we can see kind of how big of a difference that makes. Then it has to redo this process, but we'll just let it cook and then take a look at it, kind of see what the differences were. So it was at like 76 colors. We lowered that to 50 colors total for the entire image. Cool. And we'll see that we didn't lose too much. We started to kind of lose some detail in the fur and things like that. And let's see what the outlines look like now. So I think they're a little, let's go ahead and crank it down to 20 colors and see what it gives us here. See if those outlines change at all. We'll give that a minute to go. Cool, so you see that those are the geometry is way simpler because we have less colors to work with. If we go to what the tracing result looks like, it still looks pretty good. We're starting to get into that kind of low fidelity territory, but I don't think it's too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this. And you have a bunch of other advanced options too. Believe it or not, that's not advanced. We can pick like, you can pick all sorts of different things. So we can adjust the noise on this, and the little tooltips really help us kind of explain what's going on here. So with paths, what this will do is that the paths will be kind of tighter around the image or a little bit more close to accurate here. And you'll see that they have to rebuild whenever we do this. We'll take a look at it once it's done. Probably won't manipulate these guys too much more, but corners basically means that it will like try and find more hard angles to look at. So if you wanted things to appear less fuzzy, you could increase those a little bit. Typically it's a salt and pepper proposition though, so less is more. Like you'll see that with that kind of full paths thing, we start to get a little bit of haloing over here that maybe we didn't get before. But we'll leave that be, and then we can remove kind of like some aliasing by increasing the noise here. Typically you don't need to do that all the time. It depends on kind of what you're doing, and you can if this was something that was super important, then it might be worth kind of changing a bunch of these values, but for us for now this works okay. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this. This will convert, because we haven't done any converting yet. We've been looking at previews of what this looks like. If we hit expand, it's going to go ahead and convert this raster image or this JPEG to a vector image that we can use and manipulate. So let's go ahead and expand here. Then once we're done, there is our expanded image. If I click away from it, I have kind of all of our different guys here. So if I zoom in, I'm going to hold on the option key and scroll to zoom in. You can pinch and pull as well. So now I have all of these different shapes here, and each one of these is a different shape. So if I double click to drill down into them, I could select this shape, for example, and then move it if I wanted to, or remove it. So let's say that I liked this look here, right? But I wanted to kind of make these little guys highlights instead of this darker color. So I could select that. You could select that, and then just I could select it like this, and then hit the delete key to remove it from the image here. Just gonna maybe take all the black then make it white. That's what I wanted to do. I could also select multiple colors here, and then under the fill section, since I didn't want it white, I wanted it a different color. I could make these maybe a darker shade of purple, or what have you. I could even apply like a gradient to them if I wanted these to kind of appear kind of different and odd. But basically I can kind of take these things and then manipulate them. If I wanted to maybe adjust, let me go step back a little bit. Does that black look fine? Let's say that I wanted to adjust the size of this kind of orange shape right here. I could zoom in and then I can scale like we did before to make it bigger. But you'll see that it pulls all of these, it pulls the entire shape around with it. What I want to do if I want to manipulate individual pixels is use the direct selection tool. Keyboard shortcut for that is A. And then once I do that, I can zoom in here and pick like a pixel that I want to kind of pull. So for example, in this orange area here, if I wanted this to dig in a little bit further, I might grab the zoom in because it's a pretty complicated shape. Use the direct selection tool, select the areas that I want to work with, and I can pull this down and kind of start to manipulate this right here so that it shows up, kind of digs in a little bit more. So one thing that may be a little bit more concrete here, let's say that I like this cloud but I want it bigger. I can grab these handles here and then kind of expand that out, move it around. If I use the regular selection tool, it can select this and then kind of scale it to make it bigger. So maybe that's a little too big. I'll hold down the Option key so that it scales from the center. Option and Shift. So that way I kind of get this neat little kind of like a little bit bigger of a cloud pattern here. Then I might come in and get rid of that right there by selecting it and deleting it. I can really kind of come in and move this where I want. So if for whatever reason I wanted this cloud over here, I click and drag it and move it wherever I want it to be. And then I'm just going to place it wherever it makes sense. You can also rotate it, all these other things. So I can go through and I can really start kind of taking this image and kind of creating it, making it my own. If I wanted to remove a bunch of content here, we could try that. So if I click and drag and just select all of this, you'll see it selects a lot of different things, right? But if I press delete, it'll remove those. And then I can start to kind of, I can select big areas altogether. And I'll have to do some cleanup later. But the idea would be that if I wanted to remove the other elements in here, I can simply kind of pick whip them like this, mind his ear, then delete. I can also take the eraser tool, bring that up a little bit. Oops, let's go back to the eraser tool. And I can use the right bracket to make it bigger. I can go through and start kind of removing this content here as well. Maybe. Let's try again. Okay. So I'll keep with the selection tool here for now. The eraser tool is going to do something else for us. Sorry about that. We'll select that, we'll delete it. Then we're just going to keep working, and then we can kind of get this guy on his own with a little bit of work. You don't want to kind of go too far though with it. But we could do some kind of like basic compositing here. Then we can just select certain things and remove them. So we had a pretty high fidelity piece of artwork here, so it gets a little bit more complicated, but you can kind of see how we could take these things and do the beginnings of what removing them looks like. Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll do one more image here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this guy. And then we'll bring in something a little bit different. So let's go ahead and I will bring in this guy right here. Find it real quick. One second. Okay. All right, so go over here real quick. Okay, well, here's another one then. Let's go ahead and we'll grab this guy. So you can just click and drag to bring stuff in as well. File in place can work better sometimes. So I'm gonna bring in this gap. So zoom in here. Then so we kind of stretch it. Not what we want to do though. So we'll kind of keep this right here. We want to use this kind of as like a more artistic banner for something maybe. Then we'll go to expand. Image trace. Then we'll do, let's play with this a little bit. Let's go with sketch start and we'll see what we get. Okay, that's the preset. So cool. And you'll see that this kind of gives this etched look to it. And I might do this if I was going to go like take this to a laser cutter or engraver. Kind of get this neat little high contrast looking guy here. But let's go ahead and we will image trace one more time and we'll go with shades of gray. We'll give that a minute to work. Cool. And then once that's done path smoothing, and then doing that, we should have a finished guy there. Cool. So now it's all grayscale, and I can take a look at it and kind of zoom in and kind of see what it did. Again, like it just kind of makes it all a little wavy looking, but at full size it looks great. And you can take this, and like I said, if you had a smaller picture you needed to make a little bit bigger, this may be kind of great. You may want to go in and kind of clean up a few things. Like I might get rid of that section right there. So I'm going to go ahead and expand here. And there is my artwork. This looks great, but I really don't love this particular space here. So I can try and pick a different fill color to see if I can make that maybe work a little bit. Or the thing I think I'd rather do is I'll select this and I'll delete it here. And then you'll see that we have this nice thing here, and I think that looks great just kind of how it is. But that's kind of a quick look at shape building and image tracing in Illustrator. I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Thanks for watching.